How do you feel about Christmas music?
I actually like it. I love Christmas music, even the cheesy songs that are played all the time in the stores.
Why don't you go ahead and open the file that I sent you?
Oh. Oh, yes. This is great. This is awesome. How did he make this? I half thought you were going to try to scare me with a scream in there. So I was like on edge the whole time. I was like, I don't know if it's coming. But no, it was just a wholesome Christmas version of our theme song. I thought that was awesome. I love it. Thanks, Steve.
Yes. I asked Steve for a holiday remix, thinking that he would maybe just slap on some jingle bells and a few choir notes. But then he gave me that masterpiece. So
that's awesome.
Happy holidays from all three of us here at the Midnight Seminar. Hello, everyone. We already said it. Happy holidays. Welcome to part 1 of a 2-part series on our topic. Tonight, we're talking about ghosts of Christmas past, broadly defined, but also including the one Charles Dickens created in A Christmas Carol. In fact, we do talk about that story in some detail in the middle of the episode. So if this is the year you're finally getting to that story for the very first time, it's short. Go do that and then come back to us. But we're really talking about a much larger cultural connection between Christmas and ghosts, mainly in Britain. It's the story of a culture in celebration and in contemplation, and ultimately it transcends Christmas. So modern love for or celebration of the holiday are definitely not prerequisites for understanding and enjoying this history. You're going to hear us make some promises and propositions about returning to ghosts in other ways, other topics. Give us some time to fulfill those promises, but we are so excited. Thanks for being with us as we start in on ghosts in this most festive way, and enjoy visiting the damp, dark streets and the warm fires of 19th century England. All right, well, we're here to talk about my favorite Christmas tradition.
Yes.
Telling ghost stories.
Me too. We are combining 3 of my favorite things. Christmas. I love Christmas. Ghosts. And stuffy old Victorian style British writing.
Yes.
3 things that I love all mashed together. This is like my dream.
Yes, it's my dream too, but I do want to say before we get into it that I'm proposing that tonight is simply the opening of a ghost beat for us.
Okay.
Because there is so much to say about ghosts. Like, there are so many different types of ghosts. There are so many different interpretations of ghosts or other supernatural entities that are ghost-like. So I feel like we will end up doing a dozen episodes on ghosts, or if we're doing this podcast in 100 years, we will do it as ghosts. I love ghosts.
There's a ton we could get into that I imagine we're just going to have to kind of dance over, but we can always come back to it.
Absolutely. Yes. We'll flag so much for later, and that will keep me looking forward to something for the rest of my known life. Let's get down to brass tacks. It's a household term. Everyone has some frame of reference for it. But what is a ghost?
Yeah, good question. I think of ghosts as like a disembodied consciousness or presence of some kind. And I think it's crucial when trying to characterize ghosts as opposed to other forms of supernatural or non-material beings. I think ghosts, I typically associate them with people or possible animals who were once alive. Mm-hmm. So it's not just any random disembodied presence, but like the particular trace of someone who once lived.
I like that a lot. I like so many pieces of what you just said. When I was poking around for definitions, I kept kind of getting frustrated that a lot of definitions were basically just a list of more or less synonyms. So
this is how definitions often go.
I know, and it's very frustrating because you're taught not to do that. But you see soul, spirit, or apparition, phantom, specter. Mm-hmm. You initially gave a response that didn't have any of those terms in it, and I really like that. I had thought about this question before I started looking for some definitions, and I basically would have said, like, it is the mysterious remnant of some type of life form. Mm-hmm. That's, like, intentionally vague, I think, to allow some room for variety.
Yeah.
Maybe more specifically, I could have said, like, it usually takes the form of a visual entity or a presence that can be detected by another sense, perhaps like smell. But when I picture a ghost in my head, I think I also basically just picture like the appearance of a dead person.
Yeah. Insofar as I have a picture, it's something like a wispy, transparent, gauze-like image of the person.
Absolutely. And sightings are usually fleeting, and they're usually tied to a particular location that this ghost haunts.
Yeah.
If you just type "what is a ghost" into Google and then you get that Oxford Languages response, it told me that a ghost is an apparition of a dead person which is believed to appear or become manifest to the living, typically as a nebulous image.
To be honest, that feels a little too specific to me, because I would think that the ghost is something that can appear at times and fail to appear at others. I don't think the ghost is identical with the apparition, though I think it does have to take some kind of form.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the manifest part, like that this does kind of go from not being there to being there. And then I guess when they say nebulous image, it does leave a little bit more room for variety. But if you look up apparition, you'll often just see like ghost. So we're back to this, like a ghost is a ghost.
If you play that dictionary game long enough, you'll always end up back where you started. That's just how it goes.
I will be referencing a very cool book several times tonight. It's called The Ghost, A Cultural History by Susan Owens. And it's basically an account of the literary and cultural history of the ghost in England. And England is obsessed with ghosts. We're telling a very, very English story tonight.
Yeah.
And on what a ghost is, Owens says she basically follows, quote, the traditional view that a ghost is the spirit of a person who was once alive and which returns and makes its presence felt in some way.
That sounds great. I like that one.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I think it captures the essentials.
Yeah, I think maybe spirit warrants a definition too. What comes to mind for you when you hear spirit?
I guess in this context, if I were to imagine myself as having both a body and a person, a self that somehow is in or that owns or is attached to this body in some way. So I have this personality that in some ways it feels distinct from my body. Like my body gets older, but I still feel like I'm the same person I was 5 years ago. I've changed in some ways, but there's a sense that there's some me there. Now, whether that's ultimately true, I think there's a lot of philosophical debates about that. I actually think it's probably not ultimately true, but it does appear that way. And if we take that appearance seriously, if we take it at face value, then I think the spirit is that which is somehow not identical with the body, but is essential to who I am as a person, if we can separate the two. So that when my body dies, whatever lives on of me, my animating life force, personality, self thing, coiled up in some non-material substance, drifts along. And that's what I think of as a spirit.
Me too. Absolutely. I mean, I used so many of the same words that you just said, like an essential but non-physical life force.
That's it. That's the,
of a person.
Yeah, that perfectly captures it, I think.
We don't need to keep going around with the terms. You could ask how that's different from a soul. It's okay. We don't need to get that deep into the vocabulary, especially because I think seeing a ghost and like telling stories about them doesn't necessarily have to answer a question about what they are. In fact, it can have almost nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah.
A lot of people will report seeing a ghost and also say in the same breath that they don't believe in them, let alone claim to understand them. So I find that really fascinating.
That's weird. I find that really
It is weird,
strange.
But it's really common, very common. That ambivalence, though, like that debate, the competing understandings, whatever, none of that is new.
Yeah.
That's definitely historical. Historically and geographically, what ghosts are metaphysically and what they do and why they do it, also what they look like. This all changes over time and between cultures. I went on a deep dive with some of these questions. Like, I really wanted to know where the sheet thing came from, and I really wanted to know when ghosts became transparent. There are historical conditions for those updates, but I'm just teasing some ghostly fun facts right now.
Us when the sheet came into being?
I promise we will talk about the transparency.
Okay.
What I want to say at the outset is that different eras, cultures, and religions and social contexts have all produced very distinct ghosts. And when I say produced them, I mean, if they're real, then different eras seem to have birthed different ghostly forms. Mm-hmm. But basically, ghosts have long been the subject of theology and philosophy and folklore and literature, and they really vary to mirror the society that is producing them or projecting them.
Yeah.
There's a lot to think about there, but tonight we're dealing with the English conceptions of the ghost. Even that more narrow context changes a lot over time. I'll bring in some important updates as we go along. But this question has been haunting me. Do you believe in ghosts?
Short answer, no. But it's more complicated than that. Maybe it's more accurate to say I'm agnostic. I'm open to the following possibility. I'm like I have a very unoptimistic view of the completeness of human knowledge. That is, I think we tend to massively overestimate how much we understand, and even what kind of approaches to understanding will eventually yield like perfect knowledge into the world we inhabit. I think a lot about large-scale history here and how every era there was some way of seeing the world that people more or less took for granted that, you know, hundreds of years later, people look back on and think, that can't be how it was. What were they thinking? Mm-hmm. And every era tends to think, well, we've got it right. In the past, they were mistaken, and now we've figured it out.
Yeah.
And of course, you have your own stories to justify why this is the right way that we've figured out. And I think I've just spent enough time in the trenches of like pretty foundational debates in philosophy about the nature of knowledge and how worldviews are constructed and how they're justified to see how shaky it all is when you get really down to the fundamentals. Like it's so I just have a lot of like epistemic humility here. Like I don't know what the possibilities are. And so I'm open to the possibility that there are different ways that consciousness can apprehend reality. And there are different kinds of reality that can show up depending on how one's consciousness has been conditioned. There are things we don't understand, which we might someday understand, that could be somewhat close to what people now call ghosts. So it's like a lot of philosophers' hedges. And it's like, it's just the merest possibility for me. But I don't know. I'm not convinced that a purely mechanistic, material, physical explanation of the world and everything in it could succeed. That doesn't seem like a viable picture to me. When you take that step of being like, I don't think that's the right one, there's got to be something more, then all kinds of mystery comes rushing in.
Yes, of course.
In particular,
yeah,
like,
of course.
what's the deal with death? And what's the deal with life?
Yeah.
And
what's the deal with life?
how do you make sense of it? I mean, look, this. I'm getting a little in the weeds here, but these questions have really. This is what I've been thinking about since I was a kid. and
I know. And this is like why we're friends, right? This is like what we do.
What about you, Tara? Do you believe in ghosts?
I actually had hoped that we might have some differing opinion to kind of toss around, but really everything I think about this question is so similar. In response to the way that we colloquially or popularly understand and depict ghosts, no, I don't believe in them. However, I prefer to give a much more open-minded and nuanced and honestly confused answer rather than a simple no. So, like, first of all, I want this on the record. I want to hear every ghost story. Like, my set of beliefs has nothing to do with my extreme interest level in this human tradition of seeing ghosts. Like, as I said, they're my first love in the universe of weird things. They'll always have my heart. Also, people experience strange things that I would not rudely dismiss as lies or stupidity or anything like that. And we I think, are on the same page there. Like, my personal stance is that a lot of answers are in the realm of human psychology, waiting to be discovered. And there have been some really interesting studies that have explored, I guess you'd call it like human perceptions of ghosts, phantom sensations, and how our minds will just populate a strange situation with a story about ghosts given their prominence in popular culture. There's been investigation that has shed, I think, really fascinating light on things like why a Ouija board planchette moves around.
Yeah, that's interesting.
or like on sleep paralysis, even on grief, on stress, on hallucinations. But there's also so much more to learn about the mind and the brain. Yeah. I think humans also really, really underestimate the likelihood of coincidence. This is kind of what you said about the overconfidence of knowing things. I don't think we know as much as we think we know. Like incredible coincidences can happen that feel like miracles, but they're not as impossible as they seem. I think people can underestimate the faulty quality of memory. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's all relevant to seeing ghosts. But I do think there are some things left over. There are things that I hear that like blow my mind, and I'll never shut down or try to explain away stories that come from, for example, like hospice workers or people who experience something like a crisis apparition. Like, again, I want to hear all those stories. I'm always going to take it in as like really interesting data. I don't automatically jump to an impulse to debunk or anything like that, but I do think we're very easily tricked. I'm not sure where that runs up against something more external when it comes to like energies manifesting in the physical universe. I don't pretend to understand the fabric of the universe. I like barely understand the concept of outer space. Okay, let's say all ghost questions are good questions.
Yeah.
But we're really here to talk about ghost stories.
Yes.
Do you know what the first recorded ghost story is or where it comes from?
No, I have no idea, but I hope you'll tell me.
I will tell you, and I'm very excited to tell you because it's very up your alley as a person so knowledgeable about classics.
Oh, sweet.
Apparently, it comes from the 1st century AD. Pliny the Younger, a Roman, writes a letter about a haunted house in Athens.
What?
And then the philosopher, I'm going to do my best here with the name, Athenodorus.
Sounds plausible.
The philosopher Athenodorus sees this letter and doesn't believe it. So he goes to investigate by spending a night in the house.
Classic. Oh, dude, this is amazing. How have I never heard of this?
I only came across this recently, though, in a couple different places.
Okay.
Well, he hears the noises. He sees the ghost approach him and then beckon him.
Ooh.
The ghost was a phantom or an apparition. It had rattling chains and took the form of an old man.
Ooh.
This is very much aligned with our enduring definition.
Yeah, this could come straight out of Dickens.
Absolutely. The philosopher was pretty cool and calm and collected about all of this, and he was ultimately able to placate this restless spirit by helping to uncover hidden bones buried in the yard, and they were locked in chains.
Oh.
So he's able to kind of solve this mystery that's kept this ghost haunting this place.
I got to read this story. This is great. I didn't know that style of ghost story went back that far. That's amazing.
Isn't it shockingly familiar?
Yeah.
And this is ancient Rome.
Wow.
Yeah. There's so much to say kind of unpacking that story, but we're just opening a ghost beat. Let's jump into the specific context of Christmas ghosts.
Yes, let's.
Yes, Christmas ghosts imagined, entered into the literary record, or hunted on the streets of London.
Oh.
Okay. So to all the poltergeist enthusiasts, or to all the poltergeists themselves, to the crisis apparitions, to the haunted and cursed objects, we see you. We love you. Happy holidays. You will get your turn in the spotlight. Christmas ghosts. We're jumping in.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. Let's go back to holiday music for a second. I think a lot of people have a moment of confusion or curiosity when they get around to, yes, you know exactly where I'm going, when they get around to noticing the lyrics of that very famous song, It's a Most Wonderful Time of the Year. We have these kind of roving verses and choruses about like general wintry merriment. And then we get the lines. Should I sing them?
I think you should.
There'll be parties for hosting, marshmallows for toasting, and caroling out in the snow. There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago.
Nice.
Do you remember ever wondering about the ghost stories part?
I don't actually, because I never noticed that line until I already knew about the tradition of Christmas ghosts.
Interesting.
So I never had the moment of confusion, but also like that line just blew past me somehow all those years.
I think that again, you have to kind of notice it and then be like, wait, what? Or of course, you probably came to this from a very different angle than most people. This has been memed a lot. I sent you a meme about it.
It's funny.
Yes. So I love that the internet has kind of collectively noticed this. But I'm interested in what you just said because, ghost stories are definitely a Christmas tradition. I learned this a few years ago. It made me very, very happy. But I have known that you have also known this. So I was going to ask, do you know where you first came across that information?
Yeah. It was a class I took in college on 19th century British literature.
Amazing.
And in that class, we read some Dickens, including A Christmas Carol. And at that time, I remember learning that, there were actually all these other Christmas ghost stories. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And I didn't follow it up until some years later when I started getting really interested in ghosts and spooky stuff.
Oh, that's great, though. That's like what we should be learning about in college.
I know. It's some crucial information that is withheld from the masses.
Absolutely. Learning that this was a Christmas tradition, it just really helped me see the holiday in a new light.
Yeah, this is
one that I
feel
really
like this
loved.
is a key lifeline for you to survive this time of year.
It really is. Yes.
You need some ghosts.
It's a great tradition, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The nights are long at Christmas time. Humans are afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
People have theological and philosophical and practical questions about ghosts and the afterlife all through the ages. Of course, all throughout the year, but people in the winter might be sitting around a fire.
Yes.
They're inside. They don't have phones. They gather to tell stories. This is a communal activity. Humans are storytellers. So I think some component of doing this is really just in our DNA. And there's all of those really, really fundamental reasons for the practice. But there's also this burgeoning literary movement. So we start to get cultural factors on top of like the literal climate, the dark and the cold, that push people into fireside ghost chats. Isn't that just so beautiful?
I love it. It's amazing. And yeah, if I just want to emphasize what you're pointing to, how important for this tradition, and like for one of the things I love about it is the connection to actual storytelling around a fire with people, like listening together to a story told aloud. It's such a special thing. And the ghost story is so perfectly suited to that style of storytelling. I think it's like a perfect match.
I agree. The first place that I remember hearing about ghost stories being a Victorian Christmas tradition was actually in this book.
Oh, yeah. I have that one. I love that book.
This is the Valancourt book of Victorian Christmas ghost stories. And this is the first volume. There are now many more. I saw this on the computer, and one thing about me, I almost exclusively judge books by their covers. This has a terrific
a great cover.
It's like, kind of like a messy sketch or almost like a block print of a Christmas tree with skulls on it. And it's a high contrast image. There's the black tree against like an orangey red background. So when I saw this, I thought it looked very Halloween-y, but was obviously very Christmassy too, and that's always going to draw me into something. What I didn't realize when I first bought it based just on the cover was that it was actually compiling old Christmas stories. I thought that it was probably just a book of short ghost stories set at Christmas time in like foggy, smoggy London because it has great atmosphere.
I see.
So,
yeah, okay.
But something you just said reminded me of this book. The first volume is edited by Tara Moore, and she wrote an introduction. And I love what she says in the introduction, if I can just read this to you. She says, "To capture the Victorian ghost story experience is to whisper it by candlelight, to feel the tendrils of December's chill reaching from the darkness outside the hearth's glow. While our culture associates the summer campfire with this type of tale, the Victorians looked to Christmas fires instead. Walter Scott, at the opening of his ghostly tale, The Tapestried Chamber, bemoans how his written words will strip the story of its most satisfying chills. Read it aloud, he urges to his readers. Read it at night."
I love that. And it's so funny. I actually had pulled a quote from Sir Walter Scott from that story. Which is it's a wonderful, very early ghost story in this tradition, The Tapestried Chamber. Can I read the part where that she's referring to in that introduction? So
yes, please.
It goes on a bit longer than this, but I took the part that gives the gist. So this is the narrator speaking. He's about to tell a story that he expects the audience will find to be, incredible. And he writes, "At the same time, it must be admitted that the particular class of stories which turns on the marvelous possesses a stronger influence when told than when committed to print. The volume, taken up at noonday, though rehearsing the same incidents, conveys a much more feeble impression than is achieved by the voice of the speaker on a circle of fireside auditors who hang upon the narrative as the narrator details the minute incidents which serve to give it authenticity, and lowers his voice with an affectation of mystery while he approaches the fearful and wonderful part."
That's so
and it's
good.
So true. Like I love this, thinking about this aspect of the stories so much because I love 19th century British literature in general. It's like one of my all-time favorite genres. And for so many years, I was unable to get people to enjoy it with me. They were like, this stuff is dry and boring, including my wife, Angie, who was like, I just don't really like this stuff. And then had the interesting realization that if she listened to even just part of a book on audiobook, she would be really drawn in, like from this like 19th century British style, listening to a good narrator, and then she can read it. And it struck me that when I read this stuff in my head, I'm always like, I'm playing with the voice. I read so slowly because I'm like, all right, what's this?
Yeah, you're all in.
What's this going to sound like? And you, in a way, it feels like you kind of have to breathe life into some of this stuff because the sentences are longer. It's winding. Many people would regard it as long-winded writing, but if you get like, there's a beautiful rhythm to it and cadence, and I find it to be really fun to just play around with that because so much of the suspense and release of like a ghost story depends on the voice in which it's told.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I feel like I've started to like hear you reading me stories like this, which is really, really wonderful. We've been mentioning the 19th century and we've used the term Victorian quite a lot. So I just want to make sure that we explain some terms.
Good.
So to be clear about the terminology and the timeline, when we talk about the Victorian era, we're talking about most of the 19th century, so the 1800s, and then the turn of the century moment into the early 20th century, so like the 1900s. It's called Victorian because it was basically the realm of Queen Victoria in the British Empire. She took the throne in 1837 and died in 1901. 1837, 1901. But we aren't strictly confined to those years in our discussion here, right? Like if I use a term like mid-century, I'm not required to only exactly talk about one decade or something. Historical trends don't have perfectly clear bookends.
Yeah.
And the word Victorian has come to capture the cultural development of the 19th century way beyond Victoria herself. She's almost more of an organizational framework. The way that we use a lot of rulers or monarchs' names, it's basically rhetorical. This whole stretch is a period of rapid and seismic industrial development, invention, massive global growth of the British Empire, the growth of cities, both in the UK and also in the US. Social classes took some new shapes with a lot of new industries, new labor systems, inequality, and it also produces tons of art, architecture, and literature that are still hugely influential in our tastes today. I think a lot of people have also come to kind of generically use the word Victorian to mean something like old and fancy. Do you have that sense?
That's probably right. I often hear it used in ways that I don't understand. And I've always just assumed that it has other meanings that I don't know about.
I've also seen people conflate Victorian with Gothic. And Gothic is like medieval. But I
see.
I think the reason for that is because Gothic literature was kind of in a heyday in the Victorian era, which is very confusing that it's called Gothic literature. It was drawing on older themes, but we have like really prominent Gothic works in the Victorian era, like Dracula, Jane Eyre, famous works of Edgar Allan Poe. That's all in the 19th century. So I wonder if that's where some of the confusion comes from.
That's a really helpful clarification. Yeah, they're categorizing different things.
Yes.
Victorian is referring to the time period, and Gothic is like
the aesthetic,
the style, and the aesthetic, which is drawn from an even earlier historical period that you could call Gothic if you wanted to describe it historically.
Yes, although we're not actually talking about like the
Gothic period.
Ostrethoth and Goths. I don't know what they were called, but yeah, it's all kind of confusing terminology. Actually, the Gothic literature that remains popular and really booms in the 19th century is sort of part of our story tonight too, right? Like Victorians love creepy stories. There's also a lot more to say on like both the why Christmas and also the why ghosts questions. So let's talk about Christmas for a second.
Okay.
Christmas takes on a new image and new purpose in the 19th century, and England plays a massive role in transforming a religious holiday kind of into a family holiday. It becomes more and more a time for goodwill towards mankind, for sentimentality. That's a really big one. For charity, for kids and family. In Victorian England, it's an era that's super important in the invention of modern Christmas by and large. So Victorians, for example, popularized the Christmas tree for the middle class. It had earlier roots, but now it's like our emblem of Christmas in the home.
Yeah.
And yeah, Victorians are really bringing Christmas into the home in the big way. Victorians really celebrated things. Other historical Christian groups didn't endorse parties. So the Puritans, for example, earlier than this period, they had very depressing Christmases by our standards. Victorians liked to party. They liked celebrating. So we get things like the turkey dinner. That's a Victorian invention. That's a Dickens invention. Victorians invent the Christmas cracker. Americans don't really do the Christmas cracker, but do you know what it is?
I don't even know what it is.
You would recognize it if you saw it. It's like a cylindrical little present, and you pull the sides and it cracks. It's like a little popper. And out pops like a tiny little novelty gift or a crown or something. Yeah, these are British, and they're still definitely popular. If you go into a store with like a nice kind of Christmas section, they'll probably have some Christmas crackers, even in the US. Victorians refined Christmas caroling. It had some earlier roots, but they kind of, again, popularized it for everyone. Victorians were the first ones to make and send Christmas cards. That's kind of fun.
Oh, cool.
Yep. We'd also recognize a lot of Victorian decorations too, like paper chains, tinsel. Christmas as we know it now is also very German. And a lot of these traditions do kind of come from Germany, but Victorians were really sentimental, and they really committed to Christmas, and their particular stamp is on it. And some of the reason for that is because Queen Victoria was herself really into Christmas, and her husband was Prince Albert, and he was German. So there was the pipeline. Exactly. Yeah.
Dude, it's so funny how when you think about the historical accidents, the contingencies of these things, if those two hadn't gotten married, Christmas might not look anything like this.
I know, history is contingent, but then it gives us Christmas ghost stories. So sometimes things work out. It all kind of levels up in England. And actually a lot of the reason for Victorian Christmas becoming so iconic is because of Charles Dickens, who we will come back to. But there is life imitating art as Victorian Christmas takes shape because of Charles Dickens.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a lot. Suffice it to say, Christmas as we know it comes from a lot of places, but Victorian England is a big, big, big one. One element we've largely lost is the ghost story tradition. And I'm saying we, but you and I are American.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the tradition is not totally dead in Britain. So, for example, the BBC, for instance, still does Christmas ghost specials.
Okay.
But often, the content of programs for some type of special is rooted in stories or imagery from the Victorian age.
Yeah,
so there's no longer a Christmas ghost story industry like there was, exactly, where we don't have the culture of stories being printed and widely circulated in periodicals, journals, magazines to enjoy with your family around a fire at home. Victorians were Christmas people and ghost people, so they tied those two interests together in a really big way in their time. And that's just not a scene that we really have anymore unless you intentionally and kind of artificially reconstruct it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Okay. Americans were never as taken with Christmas ghosts as the British were, probably because... I know, you're shaking your head, and I'm like, I know!
We missed the best part.
I know. It's probably partly because Puritans established so many of our early cultural traditions, and they hated ghosts, and they hated Christmas celebrations. But also, in general, Halloween has simply come to house our ghost stories.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why they've been pulled out of Christmas. But I say, why not
Dude,
both?
There's room enough for ghosts in both holidays.
I always leave a seat at the table for a ghost to crawl in.
Yeah.
I'd love to tell you a little bit about earlier ghost stories for some context.
Great. Yeah, let's hear it.
Cool. A huge interest in ghost stories actually predated the Victorians. English people were already really, really practiced at ghost stories before the 19th century, so good for them.
Nice.
Really, it's excellent. There were standard formats for ghost stories in folklore, so in oral tradition, that people would tell around fires, and then they started to write down maybe after about 1700. And there were some conventions to these stories. So the dead might return to identify a murderer, their murderer.
Okay.
They might appear to entice a friend to live a better life, teach them some kind of lesson.
That's good.
Dating back pretty far, there were stories of ghosts pointing out buried treasure.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. I'd like to meet one of those.
I know. They might appear to essentially deliver the news of their own death, especially from across the sea.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so again, these are basic formats. I think that they're probably somewhat familiar to us,
Yeah.
at least some of them, yeah.
Not the treasure sinking one.
No,
but
not the treasure.
But the others are pretty familiar.
Yeah, and this is fun. Even Shakespeare's Hamlet, so that would have been right around the year 1600, that takes place at Christmas time, and a ghost is super important in that story.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Susan Owens in The Ghost, A Cultural History, noted that there was a 1705 Christmas Eve publication of a reportedly true ghost story published as a pamphlet, which was a really popular form of publication at the time. Would you like to read the title?
Sure, yeah. The name of this story is A True Relation of the Apparition of One Mrs. Veal, the next day after her death, to one Mrs. Bargrave at Canterbury, the 8th of September, 1705.
Fantastic. Yeah,
Okay,
so
yeah, that's a mouthful.
Yes, written by Anonymous.
Oh.
We actually think we know exactly who wrote this, but that's a tale for
Who could
another
it
day.
be? Oh, man. All right.
It's published anonymously.
So many cliffhangers.
Yes, I know. It's just about two women chatting over tea, but one of them is dead.
Oh, okay.
It's not very sensational, actually.
One Mrs. Veal, I presume.
One Mrs. Veal, you would
is the
presume
dead.
correctly. Yes. It's a printed story, but definitely people are also carrying on these oral traditions too. And a lot of these stories would have been family stories or local stories. And this Canterbury one is a local thing, right? It's a local story. This is all before the real consolidation into cities for most people.
Okay.
So this intimate setting mattered. It produced the form.
Yeah. One thing I've wondered about is why Victorian ghost stories tend to be so chatty. So there's can't think of a better word for it, but there's a lot of talking. There's a lot of wind up, and you often get these frame narratives where you'll have a story within a story.
Yes.
So the story will start and everyone is like, we all went up to Mr. Jones's country house for the Christmas season. And then, all this stuff's going on. And then we sit around the fire and then so-and-so is going to share his secret tale. And then you transfer to the past where the story took place. And then often even within that second narrative, it will happen again. There will be a crucial moment where someone else tells the story of. So you get a lot of this chattiness.
Yes.
And I think, so I've thought about what's going on there and why do I like it so much? And what occurred to me was that this somehow approximates the feeling of the local cultural transmission of stories that you're pointing to.
Yes.
It's not some widely known cultural touchstone that's out there. It's like did you hear what happened to Mrs. So-and-so? Well, I heard it like this. Oh, well, I heard she, that kind of hearsay, that gossipy. Yeah. And that is the perfect way, it's the perfect mode of transmission for stories that are cracking into this like realm of uncertainty and doubt.
Oh my God, absolutely. This is what we do with urban legends. It is always a friend of a friend.
Exactly, yeah.
Whose story this is, absolutely.
Yeah, that's our version
yes,
of it.
Yes, and also, if you take a book like Dracula and many others at the time, they're told in letters. Another really intimate person-to-person communication form, diary entries. So it is a different way to access a story. It's a totally different form of narration than this in-person, what is it called? Impersonal third person or whatever, impartial.
Yeah, different words. Sometimes omniscient third person, like but sometimes impersonal third person narration. Basically, someone telling you the story as if from a God's eye point of view, who knows everything and is laying it all out.
Yes,
objectively, so to speak.
Yeah, but for ghosts, like you want the people on the ground.
It works a lot better. Again, sorry to get ahead of ourselves here, but even if you think about the classic case of A Christmas Carol, that the narrator of that story is extremely intrusive. Like he's constantly speaking directly to the reader. The whole opening like gambit of that story is he's like, now, you must know, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but you must know that Marley was dead. Like
to begin with,
deader than a doornail. And if you don't believe that, no magic is going to come from this story. And then there are all these moments where the narrator is not just relaying the facts objectively, but really getting involved and chatty, like making conversation with you.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was going to say there's a person and there's a story that we really need to talk about, and we're already talking about it. So let's just stay in A Christmas Carol.
Sorry, I keep the center of gravity is too strong. It keeps pulling me back.
Of course we have to go into A Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, originally published 1843. By the way, as you know, it's fantastic, it's wonderful, and it's short. So one way to resurrect the ghost tradition at Christmas is to listen to a recording of this story.
Yes.
This is not an unpopular opinion. The internet definitely knows this, but The Muppets Christmas Carol?
Yeah, that's the
phenomenal.
Best one. That's the
unreasonably
best one,
phenomenal. It's so good. It's so good. I would love to inspire people to revisit this story, either in its original form or in Muppet form. It's really hard to say which one is the bigger masterpiece. We've already covered some important elements of it. I think I'll give a very, very quick synopsis, and you can let me know if I missed something really important.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right. Our miser, Ebenezer Scrooge, is a cruel employer. He's a greedy man, a loner, and he is terrorized by ghosts overnight on Christmas Eve, implored by the ghost of his late business partner to change his ways, and then forced to confront Christmas's past, present, and future alongside their respective ghosts. He's forced to reckon with the suffering of humanity and how he has been corrupted into contributing to it, when he actually has the resources to relieve it in his community, especially for his clerk, Bob Cratchit. Spoiler alert, I guess. These terrifying waking nightmares leave quite the impression on Scrooge. He converts into a Christmas lover, or maybe he reverts into a Christmas lover, a generous spirit, someone who carries Christmas in his heart all the year round. No more bah humbug.
Wonderful. I think that was great.
Okay.
If I may.
Please, you may.
The introduction of the character of Scrooge, the miserly, greedy Christmas hater, it might be my favorite character introduction in all literature. It's certainly up there.
I would love for you to read it.
And okay, good. I excerpted it. So when we're talking about a miser, here's the beauty of Dickens as a writer. He doesn't just say Scrooge was a greedy miser who hated Christmas. Here's what he gives us. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire, secret and self-contained and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, His thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head, and on his eyebrows, and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperature always about him. He iced his office in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm, nor wintry weather chill him. No wind that blew was bitterer than he. No falling snow was more intent upon its purpose. No pelting rain less open to entreaty. Foul weather didn't know where to have him. The heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast of the advantage over him in only one respect. They often came down handsomely, and Scrooge never did. That's like amazing.
That's so good.
I mean, that's like such masterful writing right there.
I had forgotten how extended the metaphor is with him kind of being cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's cold. That wasn't the full thing. It goes on. But that seemed like you've got to cut it off somewhere. Might have even cut it off a little earlier, but
yeah. But I mean, thanks for doing that. I think it's great to get a taste of these, and also how putting some emphasis into the reading, helps with understanding it. You kind of just have to figure out how to navigate the sentences, but then if you can do that, you're really left with something special. We don't write like this anymore, and it's very cool to be able to access it, and you can learn how to do that.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thanks for doing that. I wanted to ask you what you remember about each of the ghosts that shows up in the story.
Okay.
Like, how would you explain what they are and what they look like?
There are the 3 ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, but there's like a prelude. The first ghost is actually not one of the Christmas ghosts, but the ghost of Jacob Marley, Scrooge's business partner, who's been dead these 7 years. And he shows up, and this is the one that kind of gets Scrooge is thinking, oh, I must have eaten something bad. This is just my stomach or whatever. And
there is more of gravy than of grave about you. Oh, that might be my favorite line in all of literature. It's so good.
This is Scrooge's former business partner, and the main thing I remember about this ghost is he's weighed down with heavy chains that he forged in life, and he's carrying around this burden, and he's warning Scrooge, look, I didn't live a good life. I was a selfish miser like you, and now I'm paying for it. And this is the burden I'm carrying around. And he's, tells Scrooge, like, you're probably going to be much worse off than me if you don't shape up and get your act together. So
yeah, because you're still going with this whole project, buddy.
Yeah. And then the other 3 come, and the first one that comes is the ghost of Christmases past. And what I remember about this one is this is the ghost that is described, like there's an odd description where it goes through phases of being unsettled. Like there's this kind of phantasmagoric, like at one point there's 20 legs, and then it's like it's sparkling over here, and then it's over there, and you get the sense of almost like a cloud of images that can't quite take form, and then it sort of snaps into form, and it's the figure of an old man. Is that right? But
doesn't it have like a baby face?
It's something like it's a mix somehow of an old man and a child.
I never liked this one.
and this is the one with
uncanny.
the light on its head, right? That's like,
yeah. Sometimes it's depicted as like holding a candle, but it's also like kind of a candle.
Okay.
Weird.
And then we have the ghost of Christmas present. And this one, I remember it as being a big, jolly giant that somehow comes with all kinds of like props. Like, it's like maybe sitting on a heap of food. Like, and again, it's like classic Dickens. The descriptions are just so lush. There's like turkeys and hams and oysters and like just this this ghost sitting on a pile of plenty that's about the extent of what I recall of that ghost.
Yeah, I always thought that it was like it's basically a Father Christmas image.
Yeah, that seems right.
Who hides a lot of things under his robes, including 2 children.
Right.
That freaked me out.
Yeah. And then we have what is, I think, the really scary ghost, the ghost of Christmas yet to come. And I believe it's just like in a black cloak, like a hooded figure. And what comes to mind, I can't remember exactly the description or anything, but just this image of the ghost pointing, possibly at a grave. Is it?
Yes.
Is it Scrooge's grave?
Yes.
Gravestone. So yeah, I just have this image of like a scary hooded ghost figure reaching out a ghostly hand and showing Scrooge where he's headed.
It's very Grim Reaper.
Yeah,
that ghost.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, well, okay, really good memory, Doug. It's funny. I'm like, oh, well, what do you think? And you can like recite half this story.
Well, I should say, for years, I read this story every Christmas.
That's great. I think it's really interesting to compare the different ghosts because this is when we need a more expansive definition of a ghost to make sense out of these spirits, these apparitions.
That's a great point. Yeah, because they're
totally different
representing
from each other.
Dead people. Like
only Marley is
right. Yeah,
and Marley. I don't know if we mentioned Marley is much more in line with like a ghost that we might imagine being a pretty typical ghost, but he is see-through. That was a fairly recent artistic rendering of a ghost at the time that Dickens wrote. One of the reasons for that is because watercolor paints became popular for illustration.
Wow.
And you can paint transparency with watercolors much more effectively than with other types of artistic media.
Yeah.
Dickens was really throwing a lot at the wall to see what would stick.
Yeah, there's a wide variety.
We have like the conventional ghost that survives beyond the story in Marley, and then we have like our shapeshifter. We have like the shrouded ghost for the Ghost of Christmas Future, but it's a black sheet, not a white sheet, which is pretty unusual. And then the very corporeal Christmas present.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on there. The influence of Charles Dickens went way further than A Christmas Carol. That wasn't even his only Christmas ghost story. So
yeah, he wrote a lot.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of them, and he also started this weekly journal called Household Words in 1850, and at Christmas, that publication would put out special Christmas editions with ghost stories. There was a successor to that journal called All the Year Round. I think that's kind of the more famous one. Again, like a periodical, it ran late into the 1800s, putting out special supernatural Christmas ghost stories. I found a table of contents for one of those, actually reprinted in Harper's Weekly in the US, because Americans, again, they're not up to all this spooky Christmas stuff that the Brits are, but they take some interest in it, and they might, like reprint some of it or whatever. So yeah, I'll ask you to read, if you would please, some of the very inventive short story titles from this 1859 Ghost Edition.
So the full story, The Haunted House, and then there are these stories within that structure. And the stories are called The Mortals in the House, The Ghost in the Clock Room, The Ghost in the Double Room, The Ghost in the Picture Room, The Ghost in the Cupboard Room, The Ghost in Master B's Room, The Ghost in the Garden Room, The Ghost in the Corner Room. You would never get away with that. Like, no editor would allow this.
I absolutely love it, and it's freaking hilarious.
So funny.
To be clear, people wanted ghost stories.
Yeah,
like,
and they wanted them in every
forget.
room. Every room.
Get them in that cupboard room, or
we haven't
so
had one
help
in
me
Master
God.
B's room yet.
Stick them in there. Get them in there. So though they look a little bit different now, I think we do have some editors, some publishers kind of doing something similar now in book form. So I already mentioned that Valancourt books of Victorian Christmas ghost stories series. Also, have you seen they're little, they're like kind of the size of a postcard. They're great stocking stuffers if you have some creepy readers in your life. Biblioasis is the press, it's Canadian, and they're called Seth's, like the name Seth's Christmas Ghost Stories, because the same illustrator does all the covers and his name is Seth. Yeah, they're really cool.
That looks awesome. Yeah.
Fantastic, because I got this for you.
Oh, dude, that's the perfect gift. I know,
so I will deliver that when I see you in January. There's clearly some type of interest in this again. And I think it's because it's pretty niche, or it's a subculture, but I think there's still stuff that we like about this and that we would come back to. So we've started to mention some of those things. I just really love, and just want to note again, the hi, I'm at a fire. We're at a fire together, everybody. There's a fire happening. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it was only brushing up on the research for this that I remembered that Henry James's The Turn of the Screw is a Christmas Eve fireside gathering.
Yeah, easy to lose track of because it's such you get that little intro and then the story is so long. But yeah, it's there.
Recently in our off-mic life, you and I have talked quite a bit about Victorian ghost stories, like the actual stories, not the history of them. So I know you have a sense of some of this. Do you want to name some key elements or themes or conventions of Victorian ghost tales aside from the gathering at the fireplaces? There are a lot, but what comes to mind as some of the common features of these stories?
Yeah, okay, let me think about that. So I've mentioned it's slightly different from the fireside gathering, but they use these framing devices where you have stories within stories. That's that's pretty prominent. I tend to associate them with a particular cultural milieu, like upper middle class Brits who would be going to country estates and would have big houses with many rooms. Big houses with many rooms are common. Yes. And children figure prominently in these stories, at least the ones I've read, either both living and dead or in ghost form. Interestingly to me, a lot of my favorite Christmas ghost stories were written by women. And so I just kind of looked that up, and I forget the stat, but I sent it to you. Is it something like 70%?
It's a majority, yeah.
Yeah, a big majority of these stories were written by women. There's something like what I like about Shirley Jackson, who's much later. She was writing in, it was probably the 1950s or something. Yeah. That she captures in symbolic form a kind of isolation. And she wrote about this, that it's something to do with her status as a woman in the world, in a world that was very much dominated by men. And she means not just the world at large, but the literary world, the intellectual world that she was a part of. And there's something like this in some of the Victorian ghost stories where there's you get tales that center on nannies and children and mothers. Can I keep going?
Yeah, please. Yeah, if you have more in mind.
I'm just kind of freestyling what comes to mind. But some of these stories have a moralistic element to them. Certainly a lot of Dickens's stories have this, that the dead or the ghosts are teaching the living a lesson.
There is a very long list of these themes and conventions because, again, there are so many stories. So, yeah, you got a ton of the ones that I had. We usually get a narrator, hi, I'm a narrator, a character of some kind, or otherwise a framing device. Obviously, we get the ghosts, and they come in a variety. There's a lot of experimentation with the ghosts, and I think you see that alone in A Christmas Carol, in the one story, a lot of different experimentation with what a ghost is. There's a holdover from kind of the earlier Gothic movement about placing ghosts into these remote countryside settings. That persists because long corridors, alone in the woods or in the valleys, it really works for atmosphere. And atmosphere is very big in these stories, setting the scene. However, because their world is going so urban, you also do get the advent of city ghosts. A Christmas Carol is interesting in this way because it's sort of both. Like the spirits are ultimately able to kind of fly Scrooge all over the place. And some of it it's really important that it's in London. But he also kind of goes around to his former and future life, and you're transcending some barriers. One thing that I might add is you often get a protagonist or at least a character that is skeptical, at least at the outset.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I think everyone that I've read is somehow navigating this tension between like the rational outlook, which is skeptical of ghosts, and some like what we talked about when we were talking about vampires, the older systems of belief reasserting themselves in the modern world.
Yes, and we talked in that episode about how in the story of Dracula, that debate is really grounding the text, the story in the text, and it reflected a real kind of debate in the outside world. We definitely get that in these ghost stories too. People were unsure about the existence of ghosts. So interesting that that's like still so true, isn't it? Yeah, this is not a question that has been resolved. I think you still have this kind of rational academic skepticism, but that has not really prevented tons of people from believing in ghosts. Yes. And I think that that's probably one reason why we're drawn to ghost stories in general, but that these ghost stories have something that holds us is because that question is so on the table and it's explicitly being played with in the text. I'm wondering, out of these themes, like which ones you're particularly drawn to, or even like what is resonant about some of these themes philosophically. So I think we're kind of answering that question when we think about this debate in the story. Are ghosts real? Of course, that's the big philosophical question in the stories.
So there's that, like, that really interests me in general. There's a kind of wistful sense in a lot of these stories of the past being somehow folded into the present, or like leaving vestiges, leaving traces. And that just that sense, that feeling of like, there are things lingering. I really like that.
And that's very Victorian.
And sometimes it's like it can have different charges for me. Like sometimes it feels kind of sad. Sometimes it feels like spooky and mysterious. But that I really like it in all of its forms. That sense that the world I'm in now carries with it vestiges from the past.
It also totally makes sense to then have ghosts populate your story. Right?
Absolutely.
They are like the literal manifestations of those tendrils.
And then this one may not be a crowd pleaser. This is something that a lot of modern readers find irritating about Dickens, for example. But I love his sentimentality. I really like it. I like his earnestness. I like the moral charge of his stories. And it's simple. The messages are simple. Be generous. Don't be greedy. So simple that they sound kind of cheesy. But it's a real, I think, like a real artistic achievement to express those simple moral messages in ways that have charge, in ways that feel like inspiring. I would like to see actually more stories and other works of art that try to reclaim some of that moral earnestness that Dickens was so interested in, and like tying it with ghosty stuff. I think that's a cool combination.
Well, and it was so sincere from Dickens. He was like an activist, really, trying to fight, growing poverty in England. So this wasn't performative or cheesy for him. Like this was part of his activist push. One way I want to ask this question is like, do you think this tradition of telling ghost stories would suit our society today? But another way I kind of want to ask it is like, how do you and I effectively make a case for resurrecting this tradition?
Oh, dude, I love that. I love the question. So one thing to think about is, what are the obstacles? And there are many, and they're big obstacles. Time and attention are the main ones. People don't have a lot of spare time. And when they do have spare time, they don't want to spend it doing things that are mentally taxing. And because we don't spend a lot of time writing and reading and sharing stories in this way, at least a lot of us don't, it feels like work. And nobody wants to go out of their way at Christmas time when they're looking for a break and some release from all the stress of their lives to take on more work. So that's a big part of the problem. There are not a lot of natural opportunities for these kinds of gatherings. If you think about, I don't know if your life is like this, but once people start to have kids, it's like, maybe we could hang out 3 months from now for an hour. Let's put it on the schedule for March 12th.
And then everyone's kids are sick on March 12th.
Yeah.
And you can't
so
do it.
Casually getting together with friends over a fire is hard. And when it does happen, it's like spontaneous, and not everyone is going to be in the mood for doing something like this because it's, again, not a natural thing to do. The other thing I'll say is, as an obstacle, which is kind of an explanation of why it's so hard, is that we don't get a lot of practice enjoying listening to stories in real time. Like, I think audiobooks are pretty popular, and podcasts, and a lot of people have experience like while driving, listening to something, but or doing chores or going for a walk. But even then, it's like you press pause when you need to, you rewind, you take a break, you check your email, you send some text, you resume. And it's not the same as just sitting in real time and listening to a whole story from beginning to end. But there are things that I think we could do, and maybe we should actually try to do them. Like, here's something I'm imagining. You go back to the days of Dickens, and you have the Christmas ghost story periodicals, right? They're publishing selections. I guess there are still like literary journals and stuff, periodicals, but Substack is basically where that kind of stuff can happen easily. So I don't know. We could create and like commission submissions.
Yeah.
We could publish a Christmas periodical, and then maybe we just pick one of the stories, and like whoever wants can show up, and we read it over Zoom or maybe in person. Who knows? But like that could be cool.
That could be so cool. It's like the actual dream.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I love the idea of like modernizing the form, which is very much what you're talking about. And I think that would be a necessity to make it work and would be wonderful. I am hopeful that creativity still feels very good for people.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to get going with something. And yes, there are all these very, very real limitations and constraints on your time and on your energy. Those are so real. But this is something that I found operating this cake contest that I did during COVID was people really needed a creative project. And people made the most elaborate, insane, incredible, like horror-themed cakes. I learned so much about people from this creative project that they did. Then the moment kind of passed. I got a very intense job teaching history at boarding school. I was no longer able to operate that contest. And I haven't resurrected it because it felt very ripe for the COVID moment. But it did really teach me a lot about like committing to creative projects and that I'm not the only one willing to do so.
Everybody has these creative needs, and we don't have a lot of good structured shared outlets or like opportunities. And you have an awesome gift of creating those for people.
Thank you. That's so nice.
Like it's really cool. And one thing that helps it not feel like work for people is for it to be made into something fun. But people who would like to have a creative outlet but don't do it regularly, it's really hard to know. Like, what am I supposed to do? Do I just start drawing a picture? I don't know how to draw. Do I write?
Right.
I've never written anything. I don't know what to do. But like, all you need is some like mastermind like you to be like, here's the structure and the rules, or maybe you don't call it, here's how we're going to make it fun. And then all of a sudden, creative work can become fun, and it can become social, and it can become shared. And that's basically what we need, is to create those conditions to make it fun, social, creative expression.
That seems well suited for, I mean, not only maybe people who would be in our circle of friends, because we also share these kind of interests, but like, aren't millennials really ripe for this? You know, like, don't we love dark stuff?
We have this going for us too, if we want to try to make this happen. There's a real thirst now for, like, I think people are pretty inundated with just burn out with like digital stuff. People are like interested in reading older books, even and just reading books. Like, and some people, like, they even want the physical book. They don't even want to read it on a Kindle. Like, there's a lot of people who have this sense that, like, I want to get back to something different. And I mean, reading stories out loud together, that's a human connection.
Yes, that's why I think that really this would still have so much power and people would buy into the experience, is because having a conversation about something at once so basic, what happens after death, what do ghosts do, that is like such an old human interest back to the ancient world, right? It's also so perennially fascinating. We are still storytellers, and we should still get together and tell stories in person. I am particularly partial to ghost stories. They are so human and so fun.
Yeah.
Like, I'm also a big believer that ghosts are a year-round thing. I love them for Christmas. Of course, I love them for Halloween, but I've always said that I don't want ghosts to get lumped into Halloween completely, like with the other Halloween symbols and monsters. Jack-o'-lanterns are very Halloween-y, sure. The like veil between living and dead and all that stuff that it produces. Yes, this whole ending of the year. But I think so many people are kind of always down to talk about ghosts, always wondering about these questions. You grow up hearing about local hauntings or, urban legends, so much popular culture. Like, it's not really contained to Halloween. And I really, really like that. So I think divorcing ghosts from the Halloween industry, placing them back in Christmas, prioritizing ghost stories outside of October is actually just good for people. Like, that sounds so funny. That's just like me being like, I love Halloween. But you said in one of the parts of our darkest time of the year episode that we ignore death at our peril. And I really agree with that. And I think spending more time with ghosts in stories in our minds makes us contemplate death a little bit more, be more creative about the ways we think about it. And that, I think, would be really good for us.
I agree.
These are all reasons why I want it to happen. I do recognize I don't have children. I have like a lot more time. I have a nephew who I try to pour like literally all of my love into, but he loves ghosts, so he's a great audience for this.
Bring him into the fold.
It's hard with, not living close to your friends and needing to really... You need to have a planner in the group, or else get-togethers like don't happen. I am the planner for like most of the groups, if not all of the groups that I'm in. But yeah, maybe we just do. Sometimes all it takes is just the one person and then the second person being like, "No, let's do it."
Yeah.
We haven't come out and said this yet, but like we are currently writing serial ghost stories back and forth for each other.
We are. Yeah, I forgot to even mention that, but. I mean, we're doing it. We're already doing it. Like, and it's so fun.
Yeah, and that's another great way to do the tradition. Write your own story.
Like, I will remember this particular Christmas season as the one where you and I sent little iPhone audio clips of ourselves reading ghost stories in real time that we're writing. And it's in terrible British accents. And it's so fun because, like, obviously it's not going to be perfect. Like, you and I are not British. I don't have a full mastery of the conventions of Victorian writing.
Oh my God, no way.
And when you're writing it serially, like, you're releasing the first installment before, at least for me, I don't know what the hell's coming next. So, like, later on, I'm like, wait, what was that character even about? And so it's kind of messy. And in a way, it takes the pressure off. Like, I've tried writing stories before that 100%. I get stuck on because I'm such a perfectionist. And I'm like, this isn't coming together. Yeah. It's not as good. And I will say, I was writing this story, and then in preparation for this, I looked at some passages from Dickens, like the Scrooge one that I wanted to read. And I was immediately just like, oh yeah, that's what like the master sounds like. And it's so apparent to me, the infinite distance between like Dickens and the stuff that I can do. But who cares? Like, it's fun for me to write this stuff. And
it's so fun to hear too. You know, it's such a surprise what the other person has written in it. I mean, I would say your story is very good, but I'm laughing sometimes because an accent will like change or
like it's inconsistent.
But it's part of the charm, right? This is so organic. It's just like, it's like somewhat unfiltered creativity in a genre that I really, really like. And like, I'm on your team for this, right? We're not sending this off to be criticized in its first draft. There is expressly not revision happening. We're both like, all right, caveat is first idea, best idea, go.
This morning, I was having coffee and a breakfast sandwich, and I had an idea, and I wanted to take a note on my phone to remember to do this. And when I write that story, it's a very oral thing. I basically speak every sentence before I write it, and then I read it out loud and see if it sounds right. It's very much coming from voice rather than a sense of
I'm doing the
prose.
same thing.
And I was sitting in this cafe, and then I put my phone down and I was thinking, and I started talking without realizing it, and I said something like we did our absolute best to reassure the children who were present, and this woman looks at me, and I was like all by myself. I hadn't even had my food yet. I was just waiting for my food, and I was so embarrassed. I just like looked straight down, and it's like, okay, you have to shut up.
Oh my God, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that. I think I don't talk out loud to myself, but I will gesticulate and like not even mumble, but like kind of move my lips. And like Steve will catch me doing it sometimes. I embarrass myself all the time, but I actually think it helps me connect with people because they're like, oh, she's funny.
That makes sense.
Or it helps me connect with the right people. But that is really funny. And I think I maybe would have felt embarrassed, but I also like, how cool would it be to see someone do that? Like, we did our best to assure. like I would love to, and I'd be like, no, don't stop.
Well, did it work? Were the children reassured?
Oh my God. Okay.
Right.
There is a whole other realm of Christmas ghosts that I really want to talk about in a part 2.
Okay.
So Christmas ghosts were not confined to fiction.
Okay.
Intrigued?
Yes, very. Tell me more.
Yes. Yeah, there are accounts of real hauntings. You know, they were written as accounts of real hauntings. We can say that and leave this question on the table about what constitutes real here. Stories like that were actually recorded for hundreds of years, true ghost stories. Not all year round, not just Christmas, not just in Britain, but there were several high-profile instances of ghost sightings out in public at Christmas time in the same era or stretching just beyond it on either side. Oh. Were they real? Were they hoaxes? What the hell am I even talking about? That's where I want to go next with everything in mind that we've been talking about so far.
I want to go there with you. I don't know anything about these hauntings, and I want to learn.
All right, that's a wrap for part 1. We hope you come back for part 2. You know by now, your hosts are Doug and Tara. Your producers are Tara and Steve. And a very, very special thanks to Steve for the Christmas edition of our theme song tonight. We'll see you soon.